All right, welcome to the Rosa and Rhea podcast. We're going to talk about taboos today. I'm Rosa.
And I'm Rhea.
And we're really excited to get on this interesting topic. Taboos, and then I think also kinks, right?
Yes, and why we find certain things such a turn on, I guess, is what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
How we develop these turn ons, what causes us. I mean, okay, here's the thing. And we have, I feel like you and I, coming from our crazy family where we could be any person, any gender, any gay, bisexual, whatever, we would have been accepted 100%.
Like if I came out as gay, my parents would throw me the biggest party I've ever seen.
Exactly. Or if I went to my parents and I said I've decided to become a man, they would be overjoyed.
Overjoyed. You couldn't feel more support.
Exactly. So for me, and maybe it's the same for you, Rosa, I feel almost very vanilla. Like it's almost like kind of turned me a little bit conservative in my sexual desires in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, more simple.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of, intense kinks or fetishes, really. I mean, maybe some dynamics that I like for sure, but nothing very extreme.
No, and I mean, I haven't really even explored the stuff that you would consider extreme. But there are things that would be considered a fetish or taboo or kinky to some people that people do all the time. That's way more mainstream now. But, stuff like spanking, anal sex, any kind of dynamic where, the guy is dominating the woman or there's permission having to be asked. Even like oral sex, like BJs and going down on a girl, that used to be very taboo and not very long ago.
Yes,
right?
And I think that also, I think why oral sex is such a turn on for people is because, of course, when you think about it, putting your mouth on someone's genitals is like kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
And that might be part of the turn on.
Yeah.
You kind of know deep down that it's probably not a good idea, but you still really want to do it.
These are all things that stray from, having a baby, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of our biological desire to have sex is, to procreate the earth. And I think that's where a lot of taboos come from. The people that tell us this, that it's your entire purpose is to procreate, right, is the Catholic Church and a lot of other religions. So immediately when you're taught that as a child, everything else becomes taboo, which means that a lot of that other stuff is going to become very sexy.
Yes.
So it's kind of like that's kind of the path it takes. Anything that you're told you can't do or that is really, really wrong is going to immediately excite your brain in a certain way. And not always. And there's not a lot of research on why it happens. But even a lot of the scandals that happen in politics with these right-wing guys who are, saying that gay marriage is not okay and even anal sex is wrong. They get caught with their boyfriend fucking behind, in their car, or they get caught playing out their deepest, darkest fetish.
Yes, absolutely.
And it has nothing to do with what they've been portraying to the world.
Yes.
It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, passing laws against sex workers and then being the biggest customers of sex workers. I mean, the hypocrisy is there. So when you tell your children you can do anything and be anything, then what happens, Rosa? You end up with us.
I mean, we talk about sex out loud to as many people as we can.
Yeah.
So that there's part of that. I think that comes from confidence. I don't think that comes from it being a taboo.
Yes.
Being really open is awesome with your kids, in my opinion. But I do think it is quite ironic.
Yeah.
Like our parents would have just been so happy with any way we turned out, and it's like, I just want to have missionary sex and get cuddled and have
a boyfriend.
Have a boyfriend.
Really lame things, You guys,
all I can think about right now is I just want to go for a walk and hold hands with a guy and watch the sunset.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hug him.
That's right. Meanwhile, people doing that are just wishing that their boyfriend would be like spanking them endlessly or whatever.
Right. Like, I just wish he'd fuck me harder. But
or maybe the boyfriend wants to be pegged. Who knows? When they can't communicate it.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing is communication, obviously. We have no problems communicating our desires. But the reason...
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's
have problems
true.
communicating
That's
my
true.
desires.
I do. You remember, I don't know. Oh, yes, I do remember our last podcast. I said my homework was going to be to request someone to cuddle me.
Yeah.
I did not
Not
follow
yet.
through on that.
I mean, there's not always that opportunity. I cuddled a little bit, and it was really nice, and I didn't get into my head about it, and I just enjoyed the moment, and that was
perfect.
awesome. These things take time too, right?
Yeah.
Just like if my biggest desire, say for example, like I really want to explore pegging a guy. I mean, this is not what I want to do, but let's use that as an example just for fun. I'm not going to do that the first time I meet a guy, even if in his mind he's cool with it. For me, even if I want to try some kinkier stuff to the highest degree, in my opinion, it's still going to take time. I'm going to meet somebody. I'm going to get to know them. Maybe we have vanilla sex at first. We start getting more comfortable talking about what we want. You know, you have sex a few more times. You realize they're respectful. They, they do everything that you want to do. You feel even more comfortable with them. And then you climb the ladder to the pegging. Some people, they just want to meet up. Like you talk about that life all the time where it's like one time meet up and you fuck the exact way you want to fuck. But for me, there still needs to be a build-up, even if I'm exploring doing something really extreme.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Rosa. And actually, that applies to me as well. Funny enough, I had an encounter with someone from FetLife. And of course, I had discussed everything prior to him coming over. But then when he did come over, he sort of was like, there was a moment of kind of like awkwardness, like, okay, like, how are we going to get this started kind of feeling?
Right.
And I am the same. Even though I want to do a little bit more extreme things, I still need to ease my way into it. So I said to his face exactly how I felt. I was like, one way that I really like to start things is just by making out. We just see how that goes, and then we progress from there, see how turned on I get. I'm a very sensual person, so that's where I like to start things, very vanilla. And then he says to me, what, is this high school? And he was, I don't know, half joking, half serious. But I think once we started making out and he started realizing that it was so fucking hot and it really sort of got us in the mood for everything else, he probably realized what I was asking. But I think there's different ways of doing that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting you say high school because I think from a young age we innately know what gets us turned on and what doesn't. And I can't, making out in high school, I literally would hump a guy's leg for 4 hours. I wouldn't even come, and I would just like hump his leg. It would probably be wet where I was humping it, and then my mom would be like, "Time for dinner," and I'd be like, "Okay, so and so, you gotta go." But we just like innately know how hot that is, and we're gravitated towards it. Which, when it comes to the kink world or taboos, you innately know if something is wrong or if you're really turned on by it. And what happens when it's taboo and what it's considered wrong by society is you keep it a secret.
Yeah.
And that grows inside of you.
Yes.
Which can be either really hot when it finally happens for you, or it can be dangerous. Because if you don't get that and it's always on your mind and it's always something that you really, really want, it can, for example, if you really love watching girls poop, you could really compromise your entire life by putting a camera in the toilet, even if it's at your own house. If your wife finds it, if you could compromise your marriage, you could go to jail, and that's just a taboo that you could easily work around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the other thing that Ray and I have been talking about is that your taboos can get you into trouble, or your kinks.
Big time.
For example, Louis C.K., he had the desire to masturbate in front of people or on the phone in meetings. And I was thinking to him, thinking to Rhea, what if a guy came up to me and I knew him and he was like, "Oh, Rosa, I have this thing. I should ask you for it, right? I really, really want it." And okay, someone says that to you, you're like, what's he gonna say? And he says to me, I want to masturbate in front of you. I just want to pull my dick out and I want you to pretend to be shocked and ashamed. And I want to do it in a safe way, but I might do it as a surprise. And you kind of, I just want to make sure you're consensual, but it really turns me on, et cetera, et cetera. And he explains it. And then I'm on board. Suddenly I'm part of the game, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't turn me on, but that's something I can do for him. And then immediately, in my mind, I'm going to get something back down the road, or, there's a give and take. So the guy with that kink can still have that gratification. He can still see his fantasy come to life without harming other people or without surprising other people. Like, even if you love to send surprise dick pics to girls, just do it with someone's consent. Say, listen, I love sending surprise dick pics. Is it okay over the next week if I surprise you with a dick pic? You might not know when it's coming, but I want to know that it's consensual. There's ways to get around playing the game where you still get what you want.
Yeah, and you don't lose your job, you're not putting other people at risk, you're not hurting other people. And if you can't find someone, best case scenario, you have a partner or a friend in your life that's going to help you do this. If not, go onto the internet. There's a billion people out there that provide all kinds of services that you can pay for. They're completely safe. You can do them virtually. You don't even have to see the person if it's a certain kind of kink or fetish. And they can help you with this. And it's consensual, right? It's something that they agree to. So it's really important to ask for people's consent. I know it's kind of takes the spontaneity out of some of these things. But it's very, very important, definitely.
Yeah, and the other important thing and where you start is admitting it to yourself, right? I think that's a great place to start. Where whatever you like, even if I'm like, you know what, I actually love getting spanked, and like, say the guy I've been sleeping with lately, he hasn't been doing it hard enough, or he hasn't been doing it soft enough, and I have to admit to myself, okay, I love getting spanked. This is what I like. Then once you start admitting it to yourself and thinking about the details of how you want it, you can start admitting it to other people. And as soon as you admit it to other people, your whole world opens up, because that person might be really receptive to that idea. They might be excited to try it. And if they're not, that's fine too. You have to respect that and don't take it personally. And then move on to the next person. But it could be from anything, like I said, from spanking, or it can go all the way up to so you want to whip your dick out. So you want to surprise a girl by coming on her face when she's sleeping. Yeah. It's like, don't ever fucking do that without her consent. But if she says, yeah, sure, I don't mind if you do that, I'll play along. I'll actually be sleeping and you can do it. But, afterwards, I want you to help me. I want you to clean it up. I want you to take me out for breakfast.
Yes, yeah.
Whatever she needs, you give it back to her. Or whatever he needs, or whatever. It doesn't matter who it is or what the dynamic is. Admitting it out loud, admitting it to yourself, these are really, really important steps, because, you can get into trouble.
Yeah, and, one of the reasons, the thing that fascinates me so much is the more research I do online, and this might help people who have something that really turns them on, that perhaps they have a little bit of shame about, or they're having trouble admitting to their partners about it. Anyways, the research I've been doing, it is absolutely mind-blowing. The variance in people's interests when it comes to sexuality. Okay, it's like a snowflake, right? Every person is different in what they like. And some of them are very vanilla or, regular. I don't want to say regular, but kind of, not that crazy. And some of them are very different. Some men, they want to see a woman apply red lipstick. Some men want to watch them eat a salad naked. Some men want to whip their dicks out on a conference call, a business call. I mean, it's every person's interests are so different. So when you start thinking about that, hopefully it makes you feel a little less alone and a little less ashamed about anything that turns you on. You should not be ashamed. It's totally okay to like all these different things, and not everyone's going to like the same thing. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and shame is actually part of the turn on.
Right, yes.
When it comes to psychologically thinking about this kind of stuff, you know, most of the research is that basically it's 50-50. We don't know where kinks come from, but they can be very shame-driven or guilt-driven, and it's okay. If you're a feminist and you love women's rights, but you want to fucking degrade a woman and stick your fucking fist in her face and spit on her when you're fucking, that's all okay. That goes side by side. It's not mutually exclusive. Your sexual desires don't have to align with your political views. You know, we see this time and time again, of course. And it's okay. You might feel a little bit of shame about it, but the whole point is to do it in a way that's adult. So you're having conversations, you're getting consent, you're checking in. It's really important not to get consent in the moment as well. These conversations have to happen beforehand. So all of that combined, the shame, the way you're brought up, it could totally go towards whether you have a kink or not. Like, for example, half the people who like spanking, they like it because they got spanked as a kid and they felt very ashamed and degraded, and they grew up and they're like, oh, I want to feel that in my sex life. And half the people who like spanking never got spanked, and the curiosity about what it's like to get spanked is the reason why this kink was created. So it's kind of hard to know where it comes from, but if it comes from shame or it comes from guilt, don't worry about that. Just worry about in the moment when you're having these sexual experiences and desires that you're doing it with somebody who's consenting, who's having a good time, and then you're out of it. You're out of the shame. You're out of the guilt. You're now in a world of play and fun and fantasies and excitement.
And that's a really good point. And there's also another thing that I should also mention is that if you're the person who's on the receiving end, okay, so someone comes to you and they've worked up the courage to say this one thing that really turns them on, you know, be gentle with that person. Try and be open-minded and compassionate. You might not be into what they're describing or what they need, but try not to be too judgmental, because a lot of times it takes people a lot of courage to say these things out loud, right? Not everyone can speak so freely like you and I, Rosa,
well,
right?
Rhea, you didn't even get up the courage to even ask for cuddling.
I know. I mean, so I deal with it too.
This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right? So if Rhea goes to somebody and she says, listen, like, I've loved the way we've been fucking and I'm wondering if we could also cuddle, and they say no to her in a rude way, that's going to crush her. Right? So it's going to make her feel like she can't ask anyone else for cuddling, that if she does, she's going to get rejected again. So that's a perfect example. It's even scary to ask for that. So imagine asking for something that, you know, perceived in our culture is even crazier, like whatever, pegging or all the other examples that we've said, eating a salad naked. So yeah, I completely agree with you. But we've talked about this before. Just say, you know what? That's not actually something that I'm interested in.
Yeah. And, you know, I do that all the time. I mean, guys message me on FetLife and they say, like a guy messaged me the other day and he says, is there any way that we could hang out and you could stuff your panties in my mouth? And, you know, like there's lots of things that I'm willing to do. Oh, and he also wanted me to pee on him, which is totally fine. Both of those things I totally understand why someone would want that.
Because it turns them on. That's why they want it.
That's right.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm not, like, it's not part of my turn on. I'm not really there yet. So I just said to him, thank you for sharing this with me. Here's some places you can go, some recommendations online where you might be able to find that type of service.
Yeah.
Good luck.
So you went above and beyond.
Yeah, above and beyond. But I mean, I guess the point is try and be polite and not too judgmental, because I think people, especially if you're really repressed and you finally work up the courage to say this, like Rosa says, if you get a really rude response from a person, it can stop you from ever opening up again.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the last thing that we want.
No.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, even like the words like hypocrisy and shame, like even just a classic CEO, we see this in pop culture a lot, very rich billionaire CEO who likes to wear women's clothes, be tied up, degraded, whipped, all this kind of stuff and is sexually turned on by it and loves it and can't get enough of it. And oftentimes in the movies and stuff, it's like they find this out about a CEO or this really rich guy, and then they blackmail him or whatever. But it comes up a lot, which is just the tip of the iceberg for what people really like. But that dichotomy of this person who's always in control, who's always seen as the top leader, who has to make every single decision, who has all the stress on his shoulders or her shoulders, wants to then go into the bedroom or into the play world of fantasies and get degraded to all hell and whipped and beaten and whatever, just to let go of all of that.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's, we don't know why that happens, but I think that is a common thing. It's probably not always, but for some reason, when you're in these very high-powered positions where you are in control all the time, there's something about it that just makes you want to have to submit to someone eventually, right?
Yeah.
And it's very, very sexual.
And that's one kink that Ray and I totally relate to. We both love it. It's not my number one thing that I need all the time when I'm talking about being submitted or submitting to somebody. And I think for me, it's because I had absolutely no structure. I had all the freedom in the world growing up. Maybe that's not really why it developed, but I love boundaries. I love being told what to do. I love a guy who can dominate me and who just knows innately exactly how to do it. That's like finding a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
As we all know, because there's so many different kinds of doms and so many different kinds of subs and so many different kinds of scenes you can play out, and everyone has their hard limits, et cetera, et cetera. But I have a sneaking suspicion for myself is that the reason I like that is because of how much freedom I had and how I had no boundaries as a child.
Yes.
And now I'm totally turned on by boundaries and rules.
Yeah, me too. I love structure. I love boundaries. I'm always in control of my own life, so I'm really just sick of that. That's part of the reason that I like to be the sub in sexual relationships for the most part. But, I think eventually, once I become more experienced as a sub, because I see doming as such a giving thing now, coming from myself as needing that, I hoped in the future that I can maybe dom for some people and return the favor.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I'm just realizing in my head right now, being a sub is actually quite selfish.
Yeah.
Right?
You're
literally taking all the pleasure for yourself.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work being a dom. I think it is.
Yes.
And
because you're in a very precarious position.
Yeah.
And you're giving all of yourself to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both of them can be work, but I think also as a sub, I think it's just so hard. I want that so badly, and it's so hard to find that when you do get it really good, it's like getting a gift. And you really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So I do want to be able to return that. And I can see how valuable it is. And I can understand why someone wants to feel that, and to be able to give that to someone is incredibly powerful, I think.
Yeah. And you have to recognize that when somebody is asking you for something that is maybe taboo to you or a kink, so you are more than welcome to either take the time to think about if you really want to do that. And if you do really want to do that, ask for something in return. You can totally do that. You don't. It doesn't have to be completely even. It's like what Rhea said before. If a guy asks you to have a threesome with two girls, it doesn't mean that you then have to have a threesome with two guys. You could do something complete. You could do the dishes for the person for a week, or you can come up with your own tailor-made way to get exactly what you want back. Oh, you know what? I want you to suck my toes then. You know what? I want you to spank me every day when I get home then. Whatever it might be, you can recognize that you're giving them a gift by them asking you for something and you giving it to them and say, that sounds awesome. It's not totally going to turn me on. It might. And there's something in my head that I've been kind of thinking about that I would like to then ask for you in return. And, if you agree on it and then you're doing that thing for them, in your head, you're like, getting turned on by what you're going to get back. It's a whole psychological thing And it could really, really work out.
Yeah.
You just have to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a give and take, it's a real give and take. There's a billion popular kinks and fetishes, but there is a lot of men out there that love feet, Rosa.
Yes. Okay. So every time I watch porn lately, which is like the last few months, I noticed that every scene has a little bit of everything in it. Right? Have you noticed this? I don't know how much porn you watch. So there's always feet sucking, which like I'm like, okay, to me, I'm not into that. But a year ago, they weren't adding sucking feet, right? If you watch a threesome happen, they're fucking each other and they're doing stuff, whatever. But now, if you watch it and everything that's been shot recently,
very interesting.
They're sucking on the toes.
Because you'd think there would be special videos just for feet people.
No, but it's not. It's now been incorporated.
Very interesting. I don't watch a lot of porn. I just make porn, so I don't know. But that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, so they're so that's become maybe even mainstream. They're recognizing that a lot of people don't want to just go and watch a 30-minute video of someone sucking feet. They want to see it incorporated.
It's extremely popular. I couldn't believe how popular, like when I'm looking online, I would say it shows up just as much as some of the other very common, submissive, dominating, and then feet. It's like right up there. I don't know why. And not just that, guys who want to see a woman wear high heels. That's very popular too.
Okay.
There's a billion different things, but I thought that was so interesting. I have no idea. I haven't done any research on this feet thing, but maybe if there's some listeners that love feet, they can send us a DM and let us know what the turn on is. Maybe it's part of the taboo. You obviously
feet are filthy.
You're filthy. They're disgusting. It's like you shouldn't be putting those in your mouth. Ew.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. And no one's ever paid attention to my feet. I have nice feet. I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't if someone wants to massage them, I don't know. But no one's ever asked me. So I have absolutely no experience in this matter whatsoever.
And even further, if there's anyone else that has some interesting or different kinks, please let us know. We want to hear about them and how you find people to help you out with these things.
And more so, what is the reaction and what is the conversation like when you're sort of getting into discussing those kinks that you have? Say you really do like feet, for example. Are you saying to these women or men, I love feet? Or are you just sort of incorporating it in and sliding your hands down there once in a while? Or are you really saying, this is exactly what I want to do to your feet? And how do they respond? And then where do you proceed from there? That's the kind of stuff we're very interested in.
Yeah, and another thing, actually, speaking about licking semi-dirty areas, is that guys love to have their buttholes licked, but almost 0 guys have actually asked me to do it. It's only after I've done it where they've been like, oh, I really liked that, but I don't usually ask people to do it. I always hope that someone's going to do it, but I don't straight up ask them. So butthole licking is very taboo. I think
too taboo. No, just kidding.
Right?
Yeah, totally. I think we've said this before in a previous. If a guy asks me to do it, I'll totally do it.
Yeah, definitely. But you have to ask.
I have done it without asking. One guy I dated for a long time. You just start branching out on your together, right? You're it's not like you have to have this big conversation about it. I was dating him for years and years, so it's I'm going down there, and he was probably no, and then I was no, it's happening, and he fucking loved it, obviously. I think that it's all has to be incorporated. I feel like guys have licked my butthole before, and I was just laying there, and it was just my butthole, and I was not that into it. I think you have to be either fingering her or rubbing her clit, or other stuff has to happen for me. But I would immediately say that out loud.
Yes.
Now, before I was just kind of laying there oh, this is new, this is interesting.
Yeah, the combination is really good. I'm a big fan. Me personally, receiving end of things, I love that combo.
And I think that's what guys like, too, right? Because every time I've done it, I'm stroking their dick, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the combo. It's every time I've done anal play, it's my my private parts are like drunk. I don't know what's being touched. I don't know what's going on where, but it feels great.
Yeah.
Like you're not pinpointing. It's just like a wave of pleasure. So it just adds so much to it, like all the combos. Sometimes I wish guys had like 3 hands.
Well, I mean, you could have a threesome, right?
Yeah, that would be 4 hands.
That would be another thing that
Yeah.
you could do.
I mean, one day I will. One day I absolutely will. I think I could sit here right now and say, the next time I get propositioned and I feel comfortable and I like the guys, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, do
100%.
it. Don't
I'm not
stop
gonna,
yourself.
I'm not. And you know what? This is a tip, you guys. Every time you are shying away from doing something, ask yourself why. Why don't you want to do this? And if the answer is because I'm afraid, then you fucking go for it. You ignore that afraid voice. Because listen, meeting guys on Tinder, meeting people for the first time, meeting strangers, I'm like, how am I going to cancel this date? It's like 20 minutes away. And I'm like, should I tell him I broke my leg? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, my head is going nuts with excuses. I'm like, I don't want to go. And then I say, take a deep breath. I'm like, why don't you want to go? And then a little voice inside says, because I'm afraid. And I just fucking stomp on it and I charge forward because that kind of fear will just paralyze you in life.
Yeah.
And you won't. I literally did that to my last Tinder date and we had a great time.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome time. Super duper hot guy.
Exactly. Very important.
Nothing bad happened.
Yeah. Very, very important. Always stomp on that thing that's telling you to be afraid because that's going to stop you from having pleasure.
Yeah. And because the only thing that would stop me from having a threesome, whether it's 2 women or 2 men or whatever, is fear.
Yeah. And, a lot of talking about taboos and whatnot, there's a lot of people like going to sex parties because they like to have sex in front of other people. I think that's a huge turn
I want
on
to
for
do that.
people.
I want to do that so
Right, where
badly.
you're having people watch you have sex.
Yeah.
That is highly unusual. I mean, I don't know how I would feel about it. I have to think about it a little bit more. But when I actually imagine it, it's like, whoa, it could be quite crazy. And then you have cuckolding, right, where a man wants to have his partner be fucked in front of him and he just wants to sit in the corner, and just watch it.
Yeah, that could have a lot to do with like shame or whatever, right? But if you do it in the right way, it can like bring you so much pleasure and happiness and excitement.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Another important thing a really important thing as far as communicating with your partners about your fetishes and kinks, if you keep all this stuff inside and you don't tell people and then you go and do these things secretly, you could also be putting your partners at risk for STIs.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and for sadness.
And
if
for
they
sadness,
find out.
right?
But the STI thing is a big thing.
It is a big thing. So, for instance, if I've heard guys say to me, I'm a married guy, but when I go to work, I like to have 3 of the guys at work top me.
Yeah, pound my ass.
Pound my ass, and we don't use condoms because
Yeah.
I work with them and I'm assuming that they're clean.
Yeah.
And then I go home to my wife and I resume my normal monogamous relationship with her. But in doing so, it's fine to be bi and occasionally want to be gangbanged by 3 other guys. But the problem is if you don't tell your wife, you could be putting her at risk for STIs.
Well, the truth is you put her at risk either way.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. Like, we don't want to get in too much trouble. We're not like putting anyone in any kind of boxes. Whatever you're doing that's secret, either way you put somebody at risk. But every party needs to be in knowledge of how much risk they're taking, right? In the situation, whether you're in a polygamous relationship, whether you're straight, whether you're gay, whatever it is. Either way, that woman in your example is at risk, but she needs to know the risk.
Yeah.
In order, right?
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want, I'm sure, her husband to be doing anything in secret. And perhaps if he admitted it to her, she would say it's okay.
Perhaps, yeah. Who knows?
However, she needs to know where she's at. That's the most important thing, right?
Yes, absolutely. Get STI checked myself. Okay. But as you know, in Vancouver, it's a pain in the butt because you have to go to these clinics and you're waiting for a long time. You're talking to a doctor you don't know, and you might want to get to be safe, get checked every 3 to 6 months. Well, this is a big hassle.
Such a hassle.
Such a hassle.
Especially if you've been sick in between and you actually have to go to the doctor for something else, right? So it's like you go to the waiting room, they're like, okay, it's an hour wait. And then you're like, okay, no problem. I'd like to see the doctor, even though it's an hour wait. And they're like, okay, what are you here for?
Yeah.
And then you say out loud and the whole waiting room hears. And then you go and sit down next to 7 other sick people that are coughing all over you. Then you go into the doctor. They have 2 seconds for you. And you're like, oh, I need STI testing and blood testing. And all they do is fill out a piece of paper and they send you to another place where you have to wait again.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm having sex with people sometimes and I'm asking them, okay, well, we're talking about condoms and everything. I'm like, well, when's the last time you got tested? Oh, like a year ago. It's like, what? Like, okay, well, that's great, but like how many partners have you been sleeping with between that time, right? Who knows?
Yeah, I literally, I asked a guy that I'm sleeping with the other day. I was like, oh, like, I just wanted to check in with you. I mean, you and I don't use condoms and we're both cool with that, but I just wanted to check in with you as far as like other people that you're not using condoms with. And you know what he said? He was like, oh yeah, I should go get checked.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, bro.
Yeah.
Sweet response.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, you should go get checked. But what's happened is Rhea has found this amazing tool that you can use.
Yes.
And this takes away a lot of the annoyance
Problems.
and the problems and whatever. Maybe it's shame or laziness or whatever it is. There is a streamlined new approach that Rhea's going to tell us about right now.
Yeah, and I'm also going to just start off by saying both of us hate condoms, okay? We're going to do future episode on how to make condoms better, this and that. But in the meantime, we all need to get better at getting checked, okay, regularly. It's not a perfect method, right? Getting checked because certain STIs takes longer or less time to develop symptoms and whatnot. So it's not perfect, but if we could all get checked regularly, that would help because none of us are using condoms.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I went to the BC Center for Disease Control, okay? It was in Vancouver, and I talked to Devin Haig, who's the program manager for online sexual health services. And she was fantastic. And the reason I went to speak to her is because I became aware of this new program online called getcheckedonline.com. And we're going to put up all the information on our Instagram and on our webpage as well for our viewers and listeners. It completely cuts out the doctor, okay? So what you do is you go online to the website, getcheckedonline.com, you fill out a form, and then you get your lab form right there. And then you have it on your phone and you go to one of the labs. There's about, I think, 7 in Vancouver or some in British Columbia as well, if you're not in Vancouver. And you can go straight to the lab and get your test done like that. So you don't have to wait for the doctor. Basically, what it's trying to do is, reduce some of the inconvenience, make it easier, get rid of some of the stigma, and increase your frequency. Because if it's a hassle to go into the fucking doctor's office, you're not going to want to get tested more than once a year. The BC Center for Disease Control, they do recommend that if you're sexually active, that you get tested for HIV every 3 to 6 months. For everything else, there is no recommendations. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get tested. That just means that, everyone has different sex lives. Some people have more risky sex than others, and that you should get tested as frequently as you think necessary. I think, me personally, I should probably go in every 3 to 4 months, just to give you an idea if you're wondering. And then the other recommendation they had is the Get Checked Online resource, where you get this lab form and then you go straight to the lab. It's best for routine STI checks. So doing your checks every 3 to 6 months that you need to do. If you are symptomatic, you feel like you might have an STI, then you should not use this program. You should go directly to your doctor and get tested there.
And one of the reasons probably is because, like, for example, with me, how I had gonorrhea in my throat, even though it was not the best way that it was 10 days and all this stuff, and I had to go to the doctor. When I did get that positive result and I went in, the doctor had the needle there ready for me. So I didn't have to then go to another place.
Exactly.
Because they carry free chlamydia, gonorrhea, all of that medication and whatever you need to get rid of it in each walk-in clinic.
Yes.
So they can take care of it right away.
Yeah. That's exactly the point, is that the reason they want you, if you feel like you have symptoms, the reason they want you to go to a doctor right away is that you're going to get treated faster, and you're also going to not spread it around, right? Because it's a shorter time from you finding out that you have the STI and then getting treated.
And most of you probably know this already, but if you get that dreaded call from somebody you just fucked, it said, I actually just went and got tested because I had symptoms and I tested positive, for example, for gonorrhea. So I literally had this conversation with somebody, and he went right away to the walk-in clinic, and they immediately, without getting test results back, gave him the drugs that he needed for the gonorrhea.
Yes.
Because they knew that he had been exposed to it. Whether or not it was him that gave it to me or me that gave it to him, doesn't matter. As soon as you say those words to a doctor at the walk-in clinic, they will provide you with the medication that you need there.
Yeah, absolutely. Another really important thing that Devin wanted me to mention, especially for women, is that when you go in for a routine PAP test, they don't necessarily do an STI check. That's something that you have to ask for additionally. Okay, so really important not to make that assumption when you're going in for a PAP test that you're also getting an STI test. And then lastly, we talk about this, about communication all the time in our partnerships with our sexual partners, but another area where the communication is lacking is with your doctors, right? So the problem is, and this is another reason this is such a great resource where you can sort of skip the doctor step, is that if you go in and talk to your doctor about getting an STI test, they're going to ask you certain questions. And if you're not 100% honest with them, like they're going to ask you what kinds of sex you've been having, very personal stuff. If you're not 100% honest with them because you're not comfortable saying it, they might not request the right kind of test for you. So you might not be getting an HIV test when you need to, or you might not be getting a certain other kind of test when you need to. So it's very important that if you do go into the doctor, that you are 100% honest and that you tell them exactly 100% what the answers are to those questions.
But if you don't want to have that conversation, you can just go to getcheckedonline.com.
Yes.
And is there a promo code or anything that the guests need?
Yeah. So there is, and we're going to, again, I'll post all of this on our Instagram, but when you sign up on the website, in order to get your lab form, you're going to need a code. We did get a code for you guys, so that's fantastic. The code is Get Tested. So GETTESTED. Get Tested.
Are you sure that's how you spell it?
Yeah. And I will post all the information on all our Instagram and on our website.
And what is the lab? Do you know the brand? Is it Life Labs?
It's Life Labs,
oh,
yeah.
Perfect.
And they have sort of like
they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere. But it's only certain Life Labs where you can go with your online lab form. So you have to look on the website. Most of them are in like central areas in Vancouver. The BC Centre for Disease Control's Twitter, it's at Smart Sex Tweets, and they are always posting really interesting information about STIs on there.
And I bet all they're doing is like trying to like get the stigmas gone and get the information out there, like the real information. Because I think a lot of people have like interesting misconceptions. That, just like weird little tidbits of information that they've gotten over the years that they have taken as truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not true.
Yeah. And another thing that is fantastic for exactly what you're speaking of is their website, smartsexresource.com. And on that website, I went and checked it out. They actually have a nurse that will respond to your questions, your anonymous questions about sex, STIs, using protection, anything. So you can go on there, send in a question, and a nurse who's actually certified in STIs will respond to you via email. So I think that's a really cool resource. Also, if you have teenagers, it's fantastic because they can you know, a lot of teenagers have questions and they're too embarrassed to ask it or whatever, and that's a perfect spot. But I'm going to finish off, you know, this is very, Devin was fantastic. She had a lot of really interesting things that she wished everyone knew about STIs, and a huge one for me that I already knew that I am going to repeat forever is that herpes is not a big deal, people. Okay, they do not even test for herpes anymore because guess what? Everyone has it.
Yeah, it would be a worldwide crisis. A worldwide panic.
If they started testing everyone for herpes, everyone would think they've have it, and then they would be in a total panic anxiety attack.
Yeah.
So they don't even bother because you know what? She said it's like having a cold sore on your genitals. Not a big fucking deal. Get over it.
It's literally what it is.
So, you know, it might be an inconvenience as a cold sore on your face would be, but it's not going to kill you. It's really not the end of the world. We need to stop the stigma around herpes.
Yeah. It's funny because I always listen to Dan Savage podcast, and the last one that he just put out on the Magnum edition, he was kind of naming all of the STDs and STIs you can get because there was a woman who was letting her husband fuck this other guy, and she was wondering about how safe she was being and how much at risk. And he was like, well, you can die from HIV. Gonorrhea and chlamydia are rampant right now, and they're super annoying to get rid of. Syphilis, obviously, people have died from that. And herpes is just kind of an inconvenience.
Yeah.
That's all he said about it.
But the paranoia is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
You know, people, like, it's like they're so worried. And it's like, I guess they just don't know, you know. It's really not a big deal. Like I said, they don't even test for it. So, I mean, that speaks volumes to me.
It speaks volumes, yeah. I mean, HPV is more of an issue.
Yes.
Which no one even cares about.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently it's okay to get HPV, but, you know, herpes would be the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
That's cool, though. I think it's great that, you know, something so professional like the Center for Disease Control is willing to talk to us on our podcast, and that's one of the biggest messages that they want to get out there to our listeners, and that they really want to encourage this 3 to 6 months testing, blood test and P-test for the full gamut of STIs and diseases. They also usually test when you get a blood test for Hep C, Hep B, Hep A, etc. And, you know, that's just part of adulting. If you don't just go to the doctor anymore if you have symptoms, just like you don't go just to the dentist when you have a achy tooth. You go regularly, you make sure you're in good health, you are responsible with your body, and you know what's going on with it. And, you know, it feels really good when you have made that, you know, you take that 20 minutes or half an hour out of your day and you do something that's all promoting your good health.
Yeah, totally. And also another couple things here too. I mean, we kind of already knew this, but there's a lot of people that seem to think that they can judge how clean, I'm doing air quotes, someone is by looking at them. Okay, so STIs, they can happen to anybody. All right.
Yeah.
So you cannot be judging people from how clean they are looking, or what, you know, they look like they might not have STI. It doesn't work that way. That's for sure.
It's funny because I literally learned, that's one of the things I learned in sex ed. They when I must have been in elementary school, they took like all these pieces of paper, and they were all white pieces of paper, and they're like, which one looks the cleanest? And we were all like, I don't know. And then like, they turned some over, and some of them didn't have anything, and they turned other ones over, and there's pictures of diseased genitals.
That's a fantastic analogy because it's true.
I'll never forget it.
It's really important to remember that. And secondly, let's never forget what happened to Rosa. Condoms aren't full, like they don't work 100%. Most people aren't using them for oral sex. We love oral sex.
Exactly.
We love sucking dick.
Who uses a condom for oral sex?
No one.
Nobody.
But you can easily get an STI from a dick into your mouth, or probably vice versa. Although
I don't think it's that easy.
Well,
you gotta really go for it.
You gotta deep throat that shit.
It's a very rowdy BJ.
Yeah, and you can, you know, and also the likelihood of getting HIV through oral sex, almost nil.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
but we're talking about like gonorrhea, this kind of thing. But it can happen. So just be very cautious. A blowjob is not always safe. Right?
Yeah.
Even though we really enjoy it.
You know what's the safest thing to do is have a conversation, right? And then go from there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, if you're not having conversations, like this is a perfect example. This guy, I was sleeping with this guy a few years ago, and I was like, oh, we don't really need to talk about it because he's going to wear a condom. And we were fucking with condom for a few times, and then it broke one time. And his raw dick was inside of me for a while, and then he came in me. Okay? I mean...
Oh my God.
So it's like, and sometimes when you're in the moment, you kind of know it broke, but you're like, don't really stop.
Pretend like it's not happening.
Right? And then later I was like, have you been tested recently? And he goes, nope.
That's what you want to hear.
And I was like, oh, fuck. Right?
Yeah.
So better to have that conversation beforehand, even if you're going to use a condom, condoms aren't always effective. They sometimes break. I mean, this guy had a pretty big dick, and right? The condom didn't fit.
Well, I mean, we're gonna do a whole episode on condoms. I swear.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a video on condoms.
Yeah, we will.
Because we're gonna open the packages and we're really gonna dive deep. Because guess what our dad said? We were talking about this with our dad, and he's like, "Well, Rosa, condoms are pretty stretchy. You can put one on your hand." And I was like, "Okay, Dad, go put a condom on your hand for an hour."
Yeah.
And guess what he said? He said, those guys you're fucking last an hour?
Yeah, he was shocked. I was like, yeah, sometimes 2 hours. I'm like dying. I'm like, God, when is this going to be over? My pussy's dying.
But like, I mean, yeah, I said to Rhea, or I can't remember if it was Rhea, I said the other day, I don't mind wearing condoms. And then I realized I don't wear the condom. I don't mind using them because for me, my body, however it works, I don't mind condoms. I still get a lot of pleasure. I obviously prefer without a condom, but I don't mind if we use a condom. I can come, I can have a great time, but the guy's the one who has to wear it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? So I can't even imagine. So we're gonna do a video on the condoms, I think is what we're gonna do.
Yeah, it has to happen. And the safest people that I see having sex as far as STIs go is porn stars. I'm following porn stars and sex workers on Instagram, and they're getting tested all the freaking time. Like, if you want to have safe sex, go have sex with one of those people. The worst sex, most unsafe sex you could have is on Tinder.
Yeah, or like hooking up with some Yaletown dude on a Friday night.
Don't do it. Go find yourself a porn star. They will probably be clean.
Yeah,
probably.
well, I mean, that's the thing. Getting tested regularly does not guarantee that you're not going to get anything.
Exactly. That's a good point.
But if you're aware of whether or not you have it, you can get dealt with, and then you can be more forthcoming with the people that you have sex with in the future. Right?
Yeah, and it's
so if you get gonorrhea, you are getting tested regularly, so you go to your regular testing. They say, actually, you've got gonorrhea. You say, okay, let's get that dealt with. You get it dealt with. You get retested. You're clean. Then you can go forward once again, knowing that you're not putting out anyone else into jeopardy. But when you are having sometimes risky sex, hookups, whatever, like I said, like sometimes you do go meet someone at the Roxy and you fuck them that night. It might have been maybe the condom came off for a few minutes there, and 3 weeks later, you're not having any symptoms, so you continue on. But really, you're an asymptomatic person. You're not having symptoms, but you have something. If you're not getting tested regularly, then you could pass that along without knowing.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue is like going around for like a year, spreading your gonorrhea, and who knows
you don't even know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, this is worth a mention is that with chlamydia, if you're a man and you give it to a woman and she's asymptomatic and so are you, and you don't know, and she doesn't know, it can cause pelvic inflammatory disease, which creates a blockage in the fallopian tubes inside of a woman, and then she can no longer get pregnant. So say that happened, that could be devastating to somebody who wants to have kids. That that's what happens when chlamydia goes undetected for a long period of time. So if you are doing those things like getting tested regularly, say you go every 3 months, you get a little P-test with your lab form, your Get Tested promo code, and then you know you're good to go, then it's all good. And you can, go on and fuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to talk to a single doctor. You can just head right to the lab every time, as often as you think you need to.
Yeah. Sweet.
It's fantastic.
Well, thanks so much, Rhea. Rhea went and interviewed this woman, and she's super awesome, and we might actually have her on the podcast in the future when we start having guests on for season 2. So I'm really excited to speak with her more, perhaps in the future.
Yes, thank you to Devin Haig. That was fantastic meeting you. We really appreciate that. She's the program manager for online sexual health services for the BC Centre for Disease Control, and we really appreciate the information that she gave me that we then just passed along to you.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about that kind of thing, obviously we're super open to talking about it. Or if you disagree or agree, or if you have an opinion, we love to hear your DMs, and we love your feedback, and we especially love that you listened. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining.